Test.
Yeah, with the dark and with the highway traffic, we may have people fashionably late more fashionably than.
Oh, you're always saying that.
Yeah,
They're just doing what they
they do what they do. It's not like they paid anything to.
just have no idea who's coming to town.
That's right. It's not like we charge admission. One potential option we could have is, KLRU's moved to the ACC Highland campus. And a friend of mine still works there. Might be able to do shows there. Maybe not this monthly show, but something else.
What's the full moon show?
Yeah.
Yeah, Highland Campus is big.
Yeah, well, they've mostly moved into all of it now. They've completely transformed the space. But it's still got the train stop there, and still got the Crestview right up the road. I-35 Lamar right there. So. And it's kind of north,
What is it? There's a hotel right next to the Habitat or something.
Yeah, I think it was a Holiday Inn.
Earthy. No, there's a earth, like a greeny hotel,
Okay,
kind of across the street. It's smaller.
all right.
It's just getting over there at this time of day is a bitch too because of 35 and airport and Lamar. But it is further north.
It is further north. I just can't think of a lot of spaces that would make it available unless they also were charging a significant fee.
2 arms and 3 legs.
Or wanting to sell food and drink on top of it, which wouldn't be bad if they had a decent enough space. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about ready to start up here, even though people are coming in late. Our bartender will be here before too long, so it'll be legal to serve you alcohol. We won't talk about that right now, at least not on the stream, but we'll give it a little bit more time for people to come in. It's really dark and the highway traffic is crazy, so if people could find their way to seats, that would be excellent. Thank you. And if you would like to make a badge to get more conspicuous, you can. That's up to you. They're right there on the corner of the table. Hey, Caden. Oh, it's all right. Thanks for coming. I've got a bunch, so I'll be talking people into their seats for too long. Okay. Probably been past it. I don't know if I've been in it, but
It's off the loop around the
okay, around the old mall.
Highland Mall, kind of behind the Galaxy.
What'd you go talking there for? I figure.
There they only have a, it's like a meeting room that's at best the size of the one that we use upstairs. It's a small one.
Hey, Richard's here. Richard is here. We got the big white cooler set up for you. Most of the stuff in there is getting cold. All right. And yes, everyone who's on the stream right now, we will be starting shortly. Ho, ho, ho. I'm jolly. Oh, good. We got both of them working now. Too bad you can't see either one of them. Is it? Okay. Very good. Well, that was important why you got that one. All right. You can't see either one of them. Huh? I can hear myself. I'm actually counting how many people are on the live chat, so we'll have Q&A at the end of Alan's talk. And Alan, say your last name one more time. Utoff. I forgot since last time we talked about it. Because again, we're on the internet all the time. Utoff. Do we say the H or not? Yeah. More Scandinavian hard T. It's German. Very good.
It's an Americanized German name.
Right on. So we will have pizza before too long, once the delivery gets here. If people could make their way to their seats, that'd be excellent. But I am actually really gratified that you're making friends. That's important too. How often do we have chance to do that? Not much these days. It's not sanitary. We don't know where we've been.
I'll throw it to you after. You want to get to the Q&A slide?
Yes.
And if you want to jot down the coupon code on there, it's like a short thing. It's
Okay.
on the meetup after the slide.
It's probably the best time we let people decide and make a purchase.
I'll pause for a bit.
Gordon is over here. All right, folks at the bar, please make your way to the seats again. Sorry to be the one to herd you, but I didn't want to walk all the way over there. And please make a badge if you haven't already, so I know what your name is. Thanks again. Yeah. Actually, I don't know why I'm standing on stage. I'm always way too tall for that. All right. Yes. Well, again, this is practice, right? I mean, it isn't not very often. I am glad that everyone was making the attempt to socialize. I know we're all out of practice doing that. It isn't really sanitary to do that much these days. But welcome to VGMU. I'm John Henderson. I'm your host tonight. And I am jolly that everyone is coming out. Of all the things to do on a Thursday night, you've chosen to spend it with us. This will be the very last show that we have for the calendar year 2021. Yeah, don't boo it. I'm glad to be seeing this year go away, although no telling what the next year is going to be. But the good news is that we have signed, or rather Gordon Walton has signed for another year of shows here at the Capitol Factory. So give it up for the Capitol Factory, yay. Here in the Voltron room with the giant robot head and the giant one-armed bandit attached to the side. I think it's supposed to be both sides, but he's only got one. In any case, yeah, you don't yank on that one. There's no, it's not actually a slot machine. In any case, it could work anyway. We will have the next show in February, and that will all be up on the meetup, and I'm assuming everyone knows how to use that because you're all here. There will be, we haven't actually made any bookings beyond that. So this will be open to anyone that has a talk in mind that they feel competent enough and confident enough to say something about it. Or if you have someone that you know that you would like to see speak, please make the pitch to us and we will definitely hear it. besides, oh, before I forget, Capital Factory is also having their holiday party tonight on the 16th floor. So if anyone is here for that, you're at the wrong show. And while I'm at it, the crack I made back in August and got a pretty good pop for it is that anyone who has not been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 should not be here. So I hope that doesn't include anyone here. Otherwise, it'd be really awkward because I'm not that confrontational. But thank you for at least not admitting it to it as such. Okay, very good. But if you, well, I can run my mouth. That's why I'm the host, and he gets to sit over his laptop. But thank you, Gordon, also for buying all the drinks and also for the pizza that'll be coming before too long. Thanks again, Gordon. But my whole job right now is to waste your time because everyone's coming in fashionably late. It's very dark out. It's December in Texas, and we had 2 different main highways to get here, and they're both really clogged. That's why Richard took a little bit longer to get here, but he's here, and he'll be taking care of us tonight. One thing to point out, a Global Game Jam. People know about it. Happens last weekend in January. It will be happening 2022. And the site for Austin has just gone live as of the past day. Go to globalgamejam.org and you can find it. The same people that have been doing it since 2018, including myself, will be involved. We will be hybridizing the comfort of their own homes and not having to worry about breathing each other's air. Yeah, we kind of missed that, being able to hang out for 48 hours plus in some random space with other people. Yeah, it's not really good idea. We didn't do it at all last year, and hopefully Omicron will cooperate, although we really do not know what that is going to do. If you've seen the news today, death rate and then the hospitalization rate. We're just, how sick does it make you? Right now, New York today kind of caught it sideways, and they're trying to figure out exactly how to react, to it. That's probably going to happen here in the rest of the country, every major population center, but we don't really know everything that's going to happen until probably mid-January. And honestly, it getting cold and everyone coming together for the holidays and end of the year, that's going to be just as deadly no matter what variant is it. So just be careful about it, and you know, be smart about what you're doing. But while I'm on the subject of wasting everyone's time, let's talk about some of the games that came out of Austin this past month and a half since we've last talked. Halo Infinite, largely not made in Austin, but there's all the people at Certain Affinity who absolutely contributed to it. So congratulations to everyone on that. I mean, it's an enormous franchise, and pretty much everyone's saying it's a return to form. So one that people actually like playing, not just the free multiplayer demo, but the game itself. So congratulations on shipping that one. Airship Syndicate put out The Ruined King, single-player adventure in the League of Legends universe, made here in Austin. And if you ever played Battle Chasers, there's a lot of similarities in the kind of game it is, but it absolutely shipped, and we're absolutely happy to see that. Kingdom Hero by Boss Fight, mobile game published by Play Studios, made in part here in Austin, and also their studio up in McKinney. And also, not out yet, but coming very soon, I think the first week in January, is The Weird West, made by Wolfeye Studios and published by Devolver Digital. Again, people that are partly here in Austin, but also partly here in Australia. But Raf Colantonio and that whole team, we're just looking forward to adventures in the bizarre top-down adventures in the Weird West. Oh, and also, want to give a shout out to the Game Awards. Have the Austin Connection Armature Studios did the VR version of Resident Evil 4, made best VR game. So now is the time when we start talking about the thing that everyone really should want, which is jobs. We'll start with the job have-nots. If you would like to identify yourself as someone who is seeking gainful employment in the video game industry, please identify yourself and what you do, and I will bring the mic over to you. Who is looking for a job?
Hi, my name is Emily Schroed. Nice to see all of you guys. I am a game writer, narrative designer. I am about to release my very first game. It's supposed to release in November, but the producers just love to sit on it. It must be so comfortable. So I'm here for all of your story consulting needs in game writing, dialogue. I can do it all.
Secrets of the Crown Jewel. Very good. Anyone else who's looking for jobs? Who wants to admit it? I mean, this is practice, y'all. I mean, I don't know very many fearless people, but I know a lot of brave people. So if you want to be brave, you can talk about this tonight. Again, we may be having some people coming in later. This is just a crazy night, given everyone that got here on the highways. Thank you for not getting in wrecks. I'm glad that I managed to get here in my rental car. I may actually get my car back for Christmas. That's my good news for today. So, because, dude, all the way back in November the 4th, Diwali, like happy Diwali, dude backed into me in the Walmart parking lot. And then it took nearly a month to get a date at the, this has been on my mind today. I just got the notice today that they might actually have my car in tomorrow or maybe as late as Tuesday, but I'll at least get it beforehand. Hope you yeah, it'll happen. I'll get it back one way or the other, but more importantly, I had to drive my rental car here, my very boring Volkswagen Jetta, but it was, I didn't run into anyone else, and that's what I'm always paranoid about when I'm driving a rental car. So we will have Q&A at some point, and also I'll be reading some of the questions that we get off the stream. We'll be streaming through on YouTube. Oh, I also chat, does anyone represent a studio that's hiring? That's the other half of the equation. Has anyone got that? Okay, I'll do that one in a sec. We'll do this guy first.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Uriah. I work for King's Isle. They make two pretty old popular games called Wizard 101 and Pirate 101. There's a massive amount of new jobs posted. If you look up King's Isle careers, you should see quite a bit of them out there, from designers to QA to testers, all kinds of stuff. So feel free to look it up because we're hiring a lot.
Thank you very much. Who else is here, actually? Yes, sir.
Hey, so funny enough, I work at WeMo. So we're hiring. We've got about 10 openings right now across infrastructure engineering, QA, and some mobile designer positions too. So check it out. I think all of our jobs are on Indeed. So.
What's your name? Walter. Yeah, you're Walter. I actually met you in person. I saw you on Zoom way back in like a whole year ago. That's right. It's been a while. All right. That's right. Okay, well, how about our speaker for this evening? Yeah, we do have one. It's not me. Sorry. Wait. We got someone else? Okay.
Hey, I'm Finn from Chicken Waffle. We're a game studio here in Austin, Texas, and we're hiring for programmers and 3D artists and tech artists. I'm working on some really cool stuff and growing the team. So reach out.
Whenever you tell somebody where you work, they'll smile.
Yeah. Come get a sticker.
Very good. All right, how now about that? Our speaker this evening is a journeyman game programmer who started his own business because he could and decided not to gamble everything he had. Please welcome Alan Utoff.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. So people tend to think that to start their own business, they have to quit their day job, look for investor money, and hope that the product they ship will pay the bills, otherwise known as jumping off the cliff. Many talks that I attended about starting a game studio followed this path, and I want to show there's another way, rappelling down the cliff. It gets you to the same place, but the descent is safer and more gradual. I'll be referring to apps in this talk because that's what I'm developing, but the information can apply to game development just the same. I will be mentioning some products and services I use. I'm not sponsored by any of them. It's my own opinion. Oops. There we go. So who am I? Who is Alan Utoff? I've worked as a game developer for more than 14 years here in Austin. I've worked for AAA studios, independent studios. I've worked in most positions, QA, producer, IT DevOps, and developer, of course. I developed 2 open source libraries, the Epi engine, which is an old game engine I wrote, and then my current free stick library, which is a controller library. I co-founded the C++ meetup group here, CPP MSG. I do not have any formal business training, and I do currently have a day job at a very large game company here. So these are the topics we're going to go over. The idea, where my idea came from and where I took it. The plan, how I took it and formed business around it. All the hats and jobs I perform for my business. How I keep the lights on, keeping it going. Looking forward, where I'm going with the company. And we'll have a conclusion with Q&A. So this is my company, Sword Point Studios, LLC. I've been in business for a little over 4 years. And I've released about 30 public versions of Slash and Forge, which is our flagship product. And I do have paying customers. So you may see a lot of sword imagery in my company and products, and this is because it's intersection between two of my passions, fencing and games, the sword fencing kind, not the building fences. I've been fencing for over 27 years. I met my wife actually at the college fencing club, and I am a certified coach, and I teach at Round Rock Fencing Club. So here's our products we make. Slash and Forge is an animation tool that helps artists save time creating and modifying existing sprite sheets. And Gamepad Inspector, which is not quite out yet, this is actually the first place I'm announcing this, allows testing and introspection of a whole range of game controllers to help developers better understand how controllers should interact with their game. This is actually built on top of my free stick library. Slash and Forge is the first product that I developed from idea all the way to ship product. And Gamepad Inspector will be my second. We're going to use Slash and Forge I have as the case study for most of the slides throughout this presentation. So bootstrapping, your money, your control. So funding your project with your own money allows you complete control over the project. It's much more a marathon than a sprint when compared to investor money, and it feels sometimes like blazing a trail through a swamp. With bootstrapping, time becomes your most limited and valuable resource over money. And since you do have limited financial resources, you should pick a niche where a large company can't compete. Like, don't make Battlefield. Don't compete against EA. Make like a turn-based first-person shooter or some type of niche that's just too small for EA or one of these big studios to go after. The idea, where my idea came from and where I took it. The spark. So I was looking for a new project after FreeStick, the open source controller library I wrote, was a pretty good working point. An artist friend I had was looking for an animation tool to work with existing sprite sheets, and nothing on the market solved his problem. So I want to speak a little bit about ideas here. People don't pay for ideas, right? So you should be able to be okay talking to others about your idea and getting feedback and testing out assumptions you have. People pay for the execution of your idea, not the idea itself, right? Apple is commented many times that ideas they come up with are not original, but it's not the idea that you're paying for Apple. You're paying for the execution that they do on that idea. And don't worry about people stealing your idea, since it's ultimately the execution they're paying for your idea. So why tools and not games? So a good analogy for this is during the gold rush, people selling pickaxes made a lot more money than people looking for gold. And games are a hit-driven industry, and thus a riskier proposition for investing your own money. It was safer for me to start with tools and move towards games. And additionally, developing tools first kept me out of conflict of interest problems with my day job. The startup money. So my first year budget was about $3,000 of startup cash based on the expenses I had planned for the year. Expenses like project management software, starting the LLC, hosting, contractors, miscellaneous items. I could have saved up this money. However, my parents left me a small inheritance, which kind of accelerated the timetable. But that doesn't mean you can't take your own budget and look towards investing your own money to start your business. Having my parents' inheritance didn't stop me from starting the business, it just accelerated it quicker. So working the day job. So just note, I'm not a lawyer. But to protect your project, you should make sure you sign the prior innovation documents that your company gives you when you start working for them. Sometimes this doc is called the Employee Proprietary Information and Agreements Act. It's called different things at different companies. And this can be done after the fact, but it's a lot more difficult. You have to prove to the company that's not going to be a conflict of interest and it's not something they're interested in. And the document doesn't have to be specific. It just needs to describe the high-level idea of the project. For example, /Inforge prior invention doc read Slice and Stitch, an animation tool. And Slice and Stitch was the internal name for the tool when I first started. Make sure you're upfront with your company about your project. Don't lie to them about your project. And when asked in interviews or talking to higher ups, just reassure them that you're invested in your day job and your company won't interfere with it. And I don't think this goes without saying, but don't advertise and flaunt your company inside your day job or during working hours. Not only is this might get you fired, but it also can cause your project to be taken away by your day job due to legality concerns. So the plan, how I took my idea and formed a business around it. So you see, this is actually my business model for my company. And one of the things you need to do is create objectives for your business. How are you going to achieve them? Write down who your target customers are. Where are the challenges that you're trying to solve for them? What's your solution that your product brings for them? And how are you going to market your product? You need to estimate the initial investment you're going to have to put in. And why is your solution worth buying? So note on here, you probably can't read it, but I actually estimated $6,000 is what I need for my startup cash, but it actually ended up costing me $3,000. Right? And I used Utoff for this. They have a great startup plan. It was really helpful creating the business plan, but you can use Excel or Word or whatever works best for you. So who is your customer? So this is the persona I created for /Inforge. And I wanted to target professional artists because I came up with a solution that they face more often. Additionally, companies that they employ have the means to pay for the software. So I built a customer persona, as you see up here on the slide, listing out things like likes and dislikes in existing art apps, challenges my users have with problems I'm trying to solve, artistic skill levels that my users have, years of experience they have as an artist, products they already use. And this persona helped me focus and tailor the app that I was building to fit the artist much better. And I did this before I wrote any lines of code. The minimum viable product. So you need to identify what are the most valuable features for your product and what features you can live without. And you can create stretch goals for features that you want but don't need, but keep the MVP feature set small. And it's okay to release betas before all the MVP features are complete to get feedback. So you see here, like in red here, I didn't do legacy Mac support because there's only so many supported versions that I really need support for that. I found that I didn't need to have multiple themes, and so that was scratched for it. So the ones in black are the things I actually ended up producing for the MVP of the product. So why an LLC? So again, I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, but an LLC is a limited liability company. And legally, your company becomes an entity, a person under the law. That means to you, the law cannot come after your personal property or assets to pay off debts the business incurs. This allows me to keep my personal assets separate from the business and walk away in a worst-case scenario, protecting the assets that my family relies on. And additionally, since I'm a single-member LLC, my taxes are filed under a sole proprietorship, making my taxes a lot simpler. If you have more people, that becomes an S-corp, but I'm a single proprietary. The support group. So have a group of trusted advisors that you can go to for advice. Make sure they all bring something different to the table. For example, I have a group of my advisors who they're CEOs, they're web developers, quality assurance, business graduates, producers. And these advisors, many of whom are friends, I met through previous jobs and networking events like this one. The game industry is a tight-knit group, and there are a very good chance you'll see the same people throughout your career. And you should keep these relationships you establish with them in the industry and never burn bridges. So work time. So time is your most valuable resource in your bootstrap company. So it's critical that you maximize that time that you can work on your project. So examples of the way I maximize my time: I get up an hour before my day job and work on my business, take 30 minutes of my lunch, spend an hour or two at night on the weekends. And this gives me approximately 12 hours that I can spend a week on my business. And make sure you have a plan to know what you're working on during this time. I use Scrum methodologies to keep organized so I know what I need to work next, like Kanban or Sprint, something like that. So family time. Don't sacrifice your family for your business. Since you may be decreasing time spent with your family, you need to increase the quality of time you spend with them. Have an open and transparent communication with your spouse about the plans for your business. All the hats I wear to create my business, wearing the hats. So I'm not going to talk about all the jobs up here, but to save money and successfully ship your product, you will need to perform multiple jobs or hats at your company. So you need to learn to wear as many hats as you can and only contract out for positions you can't easily learn. For example, I contract out artists because that is one job I can't easily learn and I'm also very poor at. The CEO. So understanding basic business ideas. You need to understand supply and demand, net versus gross, and product value. How extensive is the market base where you're growing or trying to grow? What's the value proposition? Will anyone buy your product for free? Will anyone pay for your product? And if so, how much? These are questions you need to have answered and know as you run your company. You need to learn how to hire contractors from a legal and accounting standpoint, and practice talking to strangers about your company and products since you are the face of your company, the public face. CFO and COO. So you need to understand how to track business expenses for your accountants for end-of-year taxes. Make sure you reconcile your month-to-month and bi-monthly expenses. Your accountant will thank you later. Create a monthly and yearly budget to keep financial surprises to a minimum, so you don't have a lot of financial surprises coming up that you don't foresee. Have a forecast to understand sales and how those meet your goals. And your financial targets will differ depending on what the long-term goals of your company. If you just want a side project and it's not your goal to have this take over your day job, you don't necessarily need to turn as much profit or even maybe turn profits at all. But if you do want to take over your day job, then you need to know how much money you need to gain in profits to make that your day job. Developer. Okay, with SwordPoint Studios, I'm the primary developer, but with helping non-dev friends with their projects, we use code-like products to lessen the requirements of me writing code for new features. If you're not familiar with code, you have a few options. You can hire a contractor to write the code for the features. You can work with a developer friend. You can trade a different skill set. Or you could use a code-light solution. Some of the solutions we're using at SwordPoint Studios is like React Studio, Flutterflow. For games, we're probably going to use things like Unreal Blueprints or Game Salad or Game Maker, things like that. Choosing the tech stack. So if you are going to be a developer, choosing a technology you already know for your primary tech to keep tech down to a minimum will help speed up development. For example, I use Qt for many of my products since that's a technology I know very well. A secondary feature you should use to learn new technologies. So I updated the build system scripts for all of my build systems from Bash and Batch to Ruby so I could learn Ruby better. You need to architect your backend services with service-less technology when possible to minimize costs. Take advantage of startup plans and discounts for tech services. A lot of these things like AHA, Jira, maybe not Jira, but there's a lot of these services that you might find will have startup plans if you have under a certain amount of money, and they give you steep discounts. So take advantage of those. Use something like Squarespace to build your website as a time saver, and use that time to spend working on your project instead. Right? If you're making a mobile app and your users are most likely not going to interface with your website, don't waste all the time building a great website. Make it simple, make it look professional, and spend that time building your mobile app. Backend services. So again, utilize serverless technology that only you pay for what you utilize. So I know Google Cloud Platform, but AWS and Azure have these as well. So things in GCP use like Cloud Run, cloud functions. So at SwordPoint Studios, we spend less on average a month, $1 on our backend services. Like this month, I looked it up, I'm spending 2 cents on my backend services for December. So when picking a service that has serverless technology, make sure it supports a language that your developer knows to speed up development time. And use storage buckets like GCP's Cloud Storage or AWS's S3 to keep costs down. They usually give you a ton of gigabytes of storage to host files online. And for example, we used at SourcePoint Studios DigitalOcean and Dropbox at the start because it was easy to learn those, but then we migrated over to GCP because it was more flexible and was more powerful for our needs. The producer. So use a ticketing system like Trello or Jira to get your features organized. Know how much work you can get done, like basically in 2 weeks. I like 2 weeks because it's kind of the industry standard, and it's also really easy to pivot if you've gone the wrong direction in 2 weeks. And plan out the feature deadlines and take advantage of agile methodologies to stay on track. Create deadlines for yourself to keep yourself motivated, and do retrospectives on what's working and what's not with your planned work. I have run sprints where I am the only person in the sprint, and then I analyze what went wrong with my sprint and why I didn't finish stuff. And stay flexible and be able to pivot, and organize your features by release so you always know what to work on next. QA. So you won't be able to hire testers to start with. The cost is just too high. So understand the difference between things like black box testing and white box testing. Use automated test software to run the majority of your QA tests. Use test case software to keep your test plans organized so that anyone can run them, including yourself. Also, you should understand how test plans work and how to write those. At SourcePoint Studios, we use Qmetry, which is a Jira plugin, to create test plans, and I use Qtests with Jenkins to run automated tests on every single build I make. And ask friends to help run those pre-written test plans you have, or ad hoc your product. IT and DevOps. So to minimize broken releases and time it takes to publish a release, don't release by hand. Minimize time per release by creating a build system. So at SourcePoint Studios, I use Jenkins. Make sure to test and run your release on all supported platforms to catch broken builds. I, for example, develop on Mac, and so many times I don't know it's broken on Windows until it goes through the build server, and the Windows I make tests tell me it's broken. And it's cheaper in the long run, it's cheaper in the short term to have your own computers for your build system, since running them on the cloud usually costs about $30 a month, especially if you want to build on Mac. It's much cheaper to just buy like a cheap Mac. And have test VMs without dev tools installed to verify installers work on the new version before you release it. I can tell you how many times I've had developers say, it works on my system. Have a written checklist and a release plan to minimize errors as well. So hiring the help in HR. So contract out skills you don't have and you can't easily learn. Again, I contract out artists all the time. Negotiate flat fees with milestones rather than hourly billing to minimize costs and protect yourself against bad contractors. Not saying every contractor is bad, but there are bad contractors out there. And have written contracts, even with friends, when money is involved to protect your business interest as well as your friendship. And be careful with unpaid interns. There are strict labor laws about what unpaid work can be. And trade services with close friends, like help your friend out with their project in return with help from yours. Keeping it going, how I keep the lights on. Distributing how to get your products to your users. So use app stores when appropriate to ease friction of users downloading and trusting your apps, things like Steam or the Microsoft Store. Most stores will take a percentage of your sales. Usually it's about 30%, depending on the store. Distributing your app from your website is difficult on some platforms. This is getting harder and harder over the years. For example, Windows requires your app to be code signed by an expensive third party. It's about $400 for 2 years, and you have to renew it every 2 years. The code signing certificate and download URL have to be trusted by the users, so they have to see it first, and enough of them have to actually use it. And then Windows will warn your users your app could be malicious if that doesn't happen, scaring off potential customers. And try not to require admin privileges with the installer so that you can maximize your install base. Building and code signing a Windows installer can be difficult, and at SourcePoint Studios, we use Advanced Installer to help with this. For Mac, don't use the App Store. It's kind of a waste of time, especially if you're using a subscription model. It's just too hard to work with. Apple requires your app to be code signed and notarized by them, costing about $100 a year, or the users won't be able to run it at all. And this is basically hosting off your website. It still has to be code signed. Bundle your app and notarize it with a signed DMG to maximize the install base. So basically, most Mac users like DMGs. They're natural. People who ship installers are very weird on the Mac, or like a zip file. So use a DMG and have it signed and notarized. And at StoryPoint Studios, we use DMG Canvas to help with this, with signing and notarizing the DMG. Works really great. And bundle your app and app image on Linux to avoid binary incompatibilities between distributions so that it will run on more Linux distros. Runway is how long your company has until you run out of money, and burn rate is how much money your company spends on monthly expenses. So you need to invest kind of monthly in your company to cover your budget. So at StoryPoint Studios, I invest about $200 to $300 a month to cover my burn rate. And this sets me up kind of with an infinite runway. I say infinite in quotes. That can be replaced with sales as you grow your business and customer base. And this gives you time to grow without having to scramble for funding. Know what your monthly burn rate is and keep it under your monthly investment. User studies. So solicit feedback from potential users to get better understanding of what features are valuable to your customers. Have smaller groups of friends that are willing to let you bounce ideas off them. And get user feedback early in the development process so you can pivot more easily if you're going down the wrong direction. Users from this group will most likely be your first customers. Burnout. This is going to happen, but you can minimize the effect in the following ways. You can have a group that you can talk to about your project. Celebrate your small wins, celebrate your wins, even small ones. Take short breaks to keep things from becoming mundane, and keep organized so that you never feel overwhelmed. Imposter syndrome. Remember, even large businesses started out small. Join a group of entrepreneurs and having peers around, having other people who are starting a business up. Share your wins with your advisor group. And as you grow your business, this feeling will start to fade. Lessons that I have learned. Don't buy things too early. When I was developing a way for customers to contact my company, I bought Intercom. I integrated in my product, and then I never used it. I think I wasted about $1,000 over a year. Don't reinvent the wheel. Buy services instead of building when you need a service. At Slash and Forge, I bought the license server, a storefront, instead of building one. And additional, I bought a customer service portal instead of building one. And I spent that time instead working on my product. And build only when buying is too expensive. So I did build the automatic test framework system for the GUI testing because the third-party one I found, or only the third-party ones I found, were going to cost me over $1,000 a year. And design features from the user's perspective instead of from the engineering mindset. This puts your customer's experience first, keeps you from making compromises that only serve your developers. Price your app competitively. Validate your price assumption from user studies to see if your users would be willing to pay at that price point. When something doesn't work, pivot. And users also will not find your app. You cannot just throw it out there and expect a bunch of users to come to your app. You will have to market your product to bring the users to you. All right, so I'm going to hold the slide up for a bit so you can take pictures of it if you need to. These are books that I'm going to recommend. I'm reading a couple of these, but I've read most of these. So Lean Startup, which I read, one of the first books I've read, talks about how to build on your idea and how to validate your assumptions. Crossing the Chasm is understanding how to market your app. Game thinking applies things that you learn about in Lean Startup and applies them specifically to game development and game design. And Loon Shots is how to nurture wild, crazy ideas and to bring them into reality. Looking forward, where the company is going. Growing customers. So people from user studies will probably be your first customers. In the early stages, grow your business with word of mouth from friends and acquaintances. The steps needed for a customer to find your website, start using your app, and finally becoming paying customers are known as a conversion funnel. Build and test the conversion funnel on your website that you can use to attract visitors who will hopefully become your paying customers. Don't waste money paying for ads. That comes later once your conversion funnel is working. Looking forward, pivoting. So again, utilize the user studies to find out if a feature works for the user's needs. I did this for /Forge's frame padding feature, and we actually had to redo the feature 2 times because it wasn't meeting our users' needs. Scrap features customers don't find helpful to keep tech debt down from building. The intercom system I built, for example, I ripped out every single line of code so I wouldn't have to keep it along for the ride as we move to MVP. And also try out different pricing models early and be willing to pivot when one does not work. So wrapping up. In summary, you can start your job without investors' money and keep your day job. Have a plan on how you develop, ship, and market your app before you start work. Learn to wear as many hats as you can at your company to save costs. Gather feedback from users to validate assumptions. Just because your app's released does not mean people will automatically discover it. Be flexible and be able to pivot when you hit challenges along your journey. Since it's the holiday season, I'd like to offer a $60 amount coupon. I have 60 coupon codes for new subscribers to get their first 2 months free. And it's valid from now all the way through end of January. And just note, this subscription auto-renews, but it can be canceled at any time. And so the coupon code for people on the streaming is VGMU 2021. Right, so wrapping up, you can help support me by checking out /Forge or Gamepad Inspector. When that comes out, you can just follow me on social media to find out when that's released. You can contact me on my website. There's a chat bubble you can hit and contact me there for people who are on the stream. If you're here in attendance, I have business cards up by the bar if you want to get one of those. I have my Twitter. My company's is at SwordPointS, and my personal Twitter account is Alan Utoff. And then LinkedIn there is SwordPoint Studios and my personal LinkedIn. I'm going to throw it back to you, John, for questions and answers.
Well, let's just take a 10-minute break, have another drink, and hopefully your pizza. We're getting pizza tonight, Gordon? Any moment. Excellent. All right. Okay. Yeah, that is a challenge today. They have all this construction. We did not know that was happening tonight. But 10 minutes from now, we'll come back with questions with Alan. And that's everyone on the stream as well. All right, folks, you can make your way back to your seats. We'll have our Q&A with Alan. Thank you for taking some of the pizza, and thank you once again, Gordon, for paying for it. And if anyone is size S, M, or L, you're welcome to take one of the pink robot head T-shirts from Capital Factory. They're stacked over here. Seriously, go ahead and take them home if you want them, if they fit with you. The T-shirt's sitting over there, but they only have the 2 sizes or 3 sizes left, so that's why I didn't take one. And anyone who's on the stream, I've got it in front of me, and I'll be taking questions for Alan in just a second. But if anyone has any questions for Alan, here he is once again.
Hi, Alan. I'm just really interested. The marketing hat is one that's really foreign, especially to indie developers and whatnot. I'm just kind of curious, specifically, what do you do for your products when it comes to marketing before release and especially after release?
So the question is, what do I do for marketing before and after release? Right, so this is still kind of thing I'm working on this bit as well. But I've networked out to, for example, Slash and Forge, to artists I know in the industry, and I'll go to them beforehand and use them in user studies. I'll ask them like, hey, will you test the pre-release of this, right? Clean up the feature, and then I'll ask them, hey, do you have friends this might work out well for? And so I've been using word of mouth to kind of do that hopping of networking. The book I recommend marketing talks about early adopters and getting a pool of early adopters who are excited about your game or app and using them to jump over the chasm to get to the mainstream market. A lot of the newer stuff you'll see is about building an email list before you write any code. Like you just say, hey, I've got this cool thing. Is anyone interested in this cool thing? Sign up for this email list and build an email list. I didn't do that. I may do that in the future, but you'll see a lot on LinkedIn. You see a lot of people putting polls up. But like, if you have this problem, what would you want to do? They're doing that to gather email lists so that they can create hype, and then they'll have a list of users to market as they bring out product. So it kind of depends what you want. But what you really need to do is find a group of people who think that your game is the best thing since sliced bread, who are willing to kind of go to bat for you, and use them to help market your map by word of mouth.
Thank you.
Let me get the mic real quick so the people on the stream can hear it.
So I know you're not a lawyer or an accountant,
That's
but we had talked about with the LLCs, what was the process like having to go through either patents or copyrights for the products? How much?
So you're asking, read the question again. So it was on the LLC, what was the process of forming it and doing?
Well, also that, but just getting, I presume not because there are no patents, but like copyrights for Slash and Forge.
Right, how to do copyrights and various other legal things on Slash and Forge besides just forming it. So
yeah, actually the question would be like, did you get a lawyer to help with that?
Right, So what I did to start with is I had a friend who was he did business for companies and game studios. And so I asked him to help me set it up to file them on behalf. I didn't file any patents. I don't have patents. I do know the process a bit. It is very complicated and very expensive. So most people only undertake that if you really need it. Copyright your code. So code is a very difficult thing to kind of protect. So I have copyright notices in all my code as de facto. I didn't file them. I automatically get copyright on them for the fact that I'm the creator, so that you don't need to file. Let's see, what else did I do with it? It's a closed source, so that kind of helps with protecting my source code. Is there more you want to learn about the patents, or is there more?
No, it's just more just like that process. I know, obviously, as being you own the copyright once you're the creator, but I know for some legal stuff to make it like, I don't know if it's certified is the correct, but that way, if you wanted to defend it in court, you'd have to get it
So what happened? So there's been a lot of lawsuits and court cases about the fact that you can't easily enforce some of the copyrights or the patents in code. So what's been happening is that a lot of companies have been patenting algorithms so that they can protect intellectual property. And that actually is still a case that things are being battled out in court. Like there is someone who tried to either patent or copyright a linked list, for example, and that went through the courts to say well, what's the absurdity on these things, right? There was a big case with Google and Java or Oracle, where Google won the right that you can't copyright header files, like basically the API interface, you can't copyright that. And Google was allowed to take the Java JVI and have an API that matches it. So some of this stuff is still kind of legally being in the nebulous of the courts. Again, I didn't really worry about patents. I'm so small that, I mean, the chances of someone really, like, I mean, no one really notices me. So you kind of get some of that for not having your text stolen. But just be careful with it. I mean, if you really have something like you got a PhD student who came up with the coolest AI invention, maybe that's worth patenting. But again, I don't know if you can really justify the cost with your own money to do the patent.
Thank you.
So you mentioned a lot about pivoting. So how did you learn that lesson yourself? Was that a hard lesson for you to learn?
Yeah, so the question is about pivoting and how to learn that lesson. So yeah, I learned a lot, two things. One, I read the Lean Startup and learned a lot about how that actually works. And then I looked back at what I did and said, oh yeah, I should have pivoted like there and I should have pivoted there. And so going forward, after I read that book, I started looking at every time I made a feature, if the feature didn't match what the user wanted through my user studies, I would immediately shift over to like, okay, what do they really want? And how do I, the next time I go through a sprint, how do I change that feature to match the user? And if I was completely down left field, how do I rip that code out and try again? And again, I bring up the padding. If you go to /and/forge, you'll see on the left-hand side, there's a whole thing for adding padding to an animation. I ripped that code out and I rewrote that code, I think, a month because I messed it up every single time I took it to the user. They're like, this is not what I want. No, that's still not what I want. What I really want is this. And I'd ask two users. And user A would tell me one thing, and user B would tell me another thing. And so I had to pivot a lot in that feature before I brought it out to everyone that it was what the user actually want. So a lot of the pivoting comes back to finding out that you built something that no one wants and being okay with that and figuring out what they do want and being able to change the feature to match what your users really do want.
That must have been gut-wrenching.
It was a bit of a... Yeah, I mean, I knew going in that that was something I needed to just deal with and just kind of suck it up and just be like, there are going to be times where I'm going to have to rip the code out. And I've learned some lessons over the years working as a developer that sometimes, I mean, editors talk about sometimes, I've heard this with editors where they're like, sometimes or directors, they'll have to cut their favorite scene to make the movie work. And I feel the same way with code. Sometimes you have to cut the most beautiful code you ever wrote. Sometimes you have to cut it for the betterness of your app or game. Anywhere, John?
Yeah, so I'm curious.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Sorry.
Sorry. So how have you used social media to spread awareness for your projects and your business? Like, what is your main platform, and where do you like to try and send all of your people to?
Right. So the question is, how do I use social media to market my app? I am very bad at social media, but I have over the years really kind of embraced LinkedIn. So I had a very large LinkedIn following. And so I tend to use my personal because I have more connections there. So normally what I'll do is I'll post something on my business and I'll reshare it on my personal to get the traffic. I haven't done as well of a job to do more releases. I've been relying on on user studies more, but in the coming year, a lot of it's going to be me posting things that I'm doing, either development code, features, on my LinkedIn profile. I've also started to use Twitter more because there's a lot of dev there. However, the Twitter space is very JavaScript and web-centric, and so there's a lot of noise that if you don't have noise about web development, it's kind of noisy, like people kind of ignore you a bit. But I am going to try to do some posts on Twitter to do that. For example, John saw that I was shaking the rattles for this talk. I was using social media. I posted on Twitter, I think, twice, LinkedIn twice. There is some other places you can do. If you're not a part of the ATX Game Makers community on Discord, that is a very good place to show off your product and to get people to use it. There's also an IGDA Discord channel that has a lot of users. What's the other one I used? So sometimes I'll go there and I'll post things about as well. Other things I was going to do pre-pandemic was to sponsor meetups. But that is a little trickier now. The pandemic hit right when I was going to do that. There's a group called Oogla. I think it's Oogla, right, John? Is that how you pronounce it?
Oh, Ooga. Yeah.
Ooga, yeah. Now, I was going to sponsor their meetup because that's where all the artists are, but of course they aren't meeting in person much anymore. I think they might be now, but when I was going to go do it, they weren't meeting at all because the pandemic had shut down all the meetups. So, yeah, but I mean, if you're good at social media, you basically just tell your story on social media. Get people to get excited about what you're making. Tell a story. And, have friends share your post. I have a developer on Twitter who I comment a lot on his posts and reply. He also promotes my posts for him, and he has a bit of a bigger following than I do.
I have a question. I mean, you kind of hinted at it when you said that there's some communities that are more JavaScript-based or web-based. As a programmer, as a game programmer, how do you find yourself having to code switch, as it was just having the discussion about what is code? Like, there's probably going to be a lot of people who consider themselves coders in other fields, but they're curious about what you do. And do you have difficulty having those conversations?
Do I have difficulties conversations about what coding technology to use, or?
And methodology, and the difference between game programming and everything else.
Oh, the difference methodology between game programming and web programming, like that. Yeah, yes, actually, I do get into small discussions sometimes. I try to stay away from flame wars because that doesn't serve anyone. But I have on Twitter, I'll occasionally post on some of the JavaScript posts about the fact that, hey, that doesn't work in the game world. Hey, that doesn't work in the web, in the mobile space. But you will find that web developers think that everything is solvable by JavaScript and that everything is a nail, and that is not the case. You know, I can program in 6 different languages on 5 different platforms, so I have seen the gambit of code on various things, and that does help me in the fact that I can work on almost any platform and any structure that I need to without having to find someone to do that. But yeah, programming in the web and programming in games and mobile are completely different spaces. You run into completely different challenges. Do you want me to go more detail on that, John, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you need to be confrontational about it, but I mean, obviously difficulty can go a lot of different ways. Is there anything that you wish people in those other spaces understood about what you do?
Yes, that in mobile and web, mobile and games, we're resource bound. And web, there's a lot of, throwing things over, like, oh, that's an IT DevOps problem. Oh, I need 2 gigs of RAM. IT and devs will find that 2 gigs of RAM for me. And in the game space, in the mobile space, that doesn't exist. Your user is not going to go buy a new iPhone to be able to play your game or feature, right? And so a lot of people get into the space, and Unity's actually done this kind of poorly. I'll fault Unity a little bit for this. Unity's kind of like, hey, you just make the game, it works. That's not how it works. Ultimately, you cannot push. There's a limit to how much Unity can push through a person's phone. Right? If you just say, oh, I'll just create memory here, and I'll create memory there, and I'll create this asset here, eventually you'll run out of memory, and then you'll wonder why. And so you kind of need to, in games, have a plan for, here's how much memory I'm going to allocate for art. Here's how much I'm going to allocate for sound. Here's how much I'm going to allocate for code. People don't always think about the code. I read once in the Game Coder Complete book that, I don't know if Mike Mashafy wrote that part or somebody in there said, like, oh yeah, I just always at the beginning of every project, I block out like 65 megs of just space. And at the end, they're always like, okay, we need to get 65 more space left to get this app shipped. He's like, I just delete the little array, I'm done. So it's things like that, basically in game and mobile, having a plan. I feel like web doesn't always have the resource plan that they do. They're all about design, CSS.
That does sound like a Mr. Mike thing, and 65 megabytes, it'd be nice if that was all he needed, but.
Right, I know that's a little bit, it was sure it was more than that, but yeah.
He had been doing it since the 90s. Anyone else have any questions for Alan? Okay.
How do you deal with burnout, both avoiding it and dealing with it when you do have it?
Right, so the question is, how do I deal with burnout? So yeah, there was actually a whole couple months I actually got burned out to the point where I didn't work on my project for several months. A lot of it came from me having a group of friends that I could talk regularly about my product and that we kind of championed each other. I had another friend who was working on a game engine, and as you can imagine, writing a game engine by yourself is quite a daunting task. And I had another friend working on this kind of interesting social app. And so we just got together, and during that time I was really burned out on the app. We just got together and started talking about our products and our features. We're like, hey, that's really cool. Yeah, what you're doing is really cool too. Can I help you out? Yeah. And it was kind of like a group effort to lift ourselves out of that kind of hole of burnout. I will say keeping yourself organized is a big, big part of it. If you feel overwhelmed, you're going to not want to go work on it. You're going to feel like this is a chore. Like I said, I have features listed out by release, released out by MVP. I do scrubs on my my backlog. Really owning the producer hat is really kind of what you have to do to combat not getting burned out and feeling overwhelmed. Like I said, I've done things like run sprints myself to figure out how much time I can actually get features done in, right? So that I'm not constantly like, gosh, I keep trying to complete these features, but they never come in on time, right? Whereas if I run sprints myself, I can figure like, oh, I really can only do 1 feature a month or 2 features a week or whatever, right? And that helps not set yourself up for failure and not get burnt out by that. And that kind of keeps it fresh. And you're like, oh, I can't wait to get to that 1 feature. I'm almost done with that 1 feature. Okay, I just need to get it done by this date, right? And it kind of keeps it more exciting. And then you can, when you get it finished, you can go to your friend like, hey, I finished this feature. You want to try it? This is awesome. And that kind of makes it feel less like a chore and more like an exciting thing that you're building with someone else.
This is more kind of a follow-up to that question of like, let's say you get to that point where you want to share that with somebody, right? That you got to that point creating the app, but it doesn't really start meeting the expectations that you kind of have for it. So kind of like, how do you deal with maybe the project is essentially kind of like failing more so outside of what you have worked on it?
So you're saying, so the question is, how do you deal with the fact that you've built something, you share it to users, and they come back saying this is not interesting, right? You're okay with pivoting. That's how you solve it. You need to go in the mindset that you will mess up, that the first thing you probably give to user will come back and they'll say, this is not at all what I wanted. And you have to be okay with that and be okay to pick yourself up and be like, okay, give me a few weeks, let me come back to you with version 2. Go out, write version 2, come back to the user. They still may say, hey, this is not quite what I want, but I bet they'll say this is closer. And you just keep repeating until you get to it. I mean, one of the things we don't do a lot in game development is celebrate the failures. A lot of people feel like if you fail at a game or fail at a project, that's a complete like no-no and it's taboo. But that happens, and what we do is we learn from those failures, right? And in game development and building these apps, you need to be okay with the fact that you're going to fail on some of these features and that you got to be okay with that and be able to figure out why you failed to be able to change and pivot to continue to go forward.
Hi.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How about you? So when you say the word pivot, that brings to mind the terminology sunk cost fallacy. And I'm wondering, where is the balance between pivoting because you realize that it needs to be completely different, or if you need to take a slightly different direction, or just abandon the idea entirely?
Right, so the question is, where do you draw the line between abandonment, you sunk too much into this, versus like soft pivoting? So a little bit of that is how much time in a bootstrap company you've spent on something, right? If a feature is capitalizing like 2-3 months, I think at that point it's time to like kind of cut that or put it aside and switch over to a feature, the next feature on your list, and start working on that. Because like on a bootstrap, it's not necessarily like I could sink as much money as I want into it theoretically, but it's time that's the problem. Like I don't want to sink bukus of time into a feature that then sacrifices other ones. So normally my kind of rule of thumb is, so the pivot stuff is I go to user study and it's something that I can relatively easily fix it, and within a couple, like maybe a month or so in my case, I mean, this would be different if you have more time. If I can fix it in about a month and get you a new version, that's a pivot. If it's something where like I went completely the wrong way and I've done it multiple times, maybe like 3 times, I guess would kind of be my stick. If I've done 3 times wrong and I just have no idea how this is, it's time to put that feature down, go back to the design, go talk to your user to understand your requirements, because clearly those requirements are wrong, and move on to the next feature.
Any more questions for Alan?
Online's been pretty quiet.
Yeah. So for the record, there were some people that had some difficulty getting into the building, as it turns out. A couple of people posted on our meetup room. If that was any of the people here, congratulations, you found your way through the bizarre maze that they've made of the lobby. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you can feel like a rat in a maze, but that's not fun.
Combination of the GPS, because I know when 35, it gave me like the construction. I had to like go on Congress, come back on 7th.
This is a weird building. I mean, that it's also in the middle of several one-way streets right off the highway, but then half of it is a hotel, and then the other half is this office space business. If you've not been here before, yeah, I sympathize with that. I only have more experience because I've been here a lot and hosted shows here before. So, any other questions for Alan? Well, we actually have this room until 9 o'clock, so it's very early, but one more hand for Alan Utoff. And Gordon, do you want to take any of this pizza home? Yeah, probably not all of it then. Okay. Please eat it before we leave. That's right. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Please be safe from this holiday season and the end of the year. We'll be seeing you again in February. Thanks much. One more thing, folks. If you parked in the underground parking, you will want one of these. Vanessa has a stack of those at the front desk. Please get one. You want to spend $7, not $30 to get out. Is this the parking in this building? In this building.